standing by at the CDU headquarters, where I presume the atmosphere is fairly positive. Michaela, how are these exit poll numbers being received there among the Conservatives?
Well, there were instant celebrations, but nobody was ecstatic because currently these first initial exit polls, and it's very early days, are just below that psychologically important threshold of the 30% mark. That's where the Conservative CDU-CSU has been polling in the polls really for months leading up to these elections. And Friedrich Merz did take a risk in Parliament. He did accept votes from the far-right Alternative for Germany, who, as it looks like, have almost potentially doubled their percentage share from just about 10% to just under 20% here. And that is something where he will be seen as responsible. So yes, they know they're in the lead, as expected. They know that they're very likely to have Friedrich Merz as the next Chancellor of Germany. That's a huge win, but there's no wow factor as yet. It's not above 30%, and there's a slight sigh of relief that a two-party coalition at these very early hours and minutes seems to be within reach, because that's what nobody here wants, is a complex negotiation that would involve two more partners.
Absolutely. Do you get the impression that the Germans have given Merz a strong mandate? I mean, 29%, up almost 5% since the last election, but is he going to go into this in a strong position?
Yes, but there's two factors to this. First of all, the CDU-CSU managed to pick up almost 5 percentage points. That is a big, significant win. But let's just remember that these are early, these are snap elections, and they emanate from the spectacular failure of a three-way coalition. So it is the weakness of Olaf Scholz, the current Chancellor, and his ability to hold a three-way coalition together. It's also the weakness of the Social Democrats, who have suffered a clear defeat here today.
All right, Michaela Kufner, we're going to have to leave it there at the CDU headquarters. We will be back with you again, no doubt, later on in the evening. Michaela, thank you so much. This is Alice Weidel from the AfD speaking.
It was a fantastic election campaign. We did really well. And as we've seen in the exit polls, what we've seen is that we are the only party who have doubled our position over the last election. Double. They wanted to cut our numbers in half, but the opposite is what has occurred. And one thing is for sure, we will always have an open hand to get involved in a coalition in the German government. The will of Germany is something we will implement. We are always prepared to fulfill the will of the people in a German government. It remains to be seen what will happen in the next few weeks. But, friends, if what we predicted occurs, that the CDU carries out election fraud on the AfD by copying our program and then entering into a coalition with the left wing, then there'll be new elections faster than you can imagine, and we will overtake the CDU, and that is our aim. Friends, once again, thank you to all of you who are unable to be here this evening, who went out to campaign for us tirelessly. no matter how cold it was, standing on the streets, at the stands, carrying out election campaigning for all of us. Thank you to all of our tireless election campaigners. You were super. You were so strong. It was fantastic. And Timo, thank you to you as well for all your support. Fantastic. And I would now like to give the floor to you. Thank you for your support.
And that was Alice Weidel from the AfD, the Alternative for Germany, speaking about their election results, sounding very upbeat and positive. We're going to get more from our political correspondent who's at the AfD party headquarters, Matthew Moore. Matthew, a strong result for the far right, as expected. So 19.5% is what the exit poll is showing. How are people reacting there?
I have to say, it's a strange one tonight for the AfD because it's a historic result. They've almost doubled what they got last time, but it was a sense of disappointment as that number was read out in the room. I was here the last time they performed in a national election, and it was much louder. I was expecting scenes of jubilation, of screaming, but there was nothing like that. There was disappointment because they fell under that 20%. They've been polling really solidly on 20%, 21% in some polls, and to come under 20% level is a sense that they were really hoping to be above that. And so, although they're saying that it's a great result and they wanted to half our result, we just heard from Alice Weidel saying that it's a strange atmosphere now because they didn't get above the 20%, and that's there's a sense that the air has just kind of left the balloon. It's a strange one, Anya.
Yeah. However, a lot of people did vote for the AfD. So just remind us what's behind this support for the Alternative for Germany.
Of course, you're right. It's a historic result, and 1 in 5 voters, it looks like, did put their cross next to the AfD. So, of course, they're really delighted. But it's interesting. Just that the initial response was a very muted one. I'll tell you the reasons that many people turn to the AfD is because, as we've heard throughout the night and throughout recent months, there's a sense of real frustration out there among the German public about the economy, about the energy crisis. Their bills are going up. People are feeling that pinch in their everyday lives. And the Alternative for Germany is offering solutions to that. Some of them very radical. Buying gas from Russia. They're now chanting behind me, AfD. And there's a sense that they are confident they're offering something else to the voters. And make no mistake, it is a huge result for them because they're now 1 in 5 voters is voting for them. That means they will have a big voice in the Bundestag. They will probably be the main party of opposition. They are the second biggest force. That means way more exposure. It also means normalisation, really important for this party. And the other thing is that it also means a lot of money that they can then pour into marketing and establishing and professionalising themselves in the next 5 years or 4 years until the next election. And that's what they've got their eye on, is 2029. That's when they hope, as we heard tonight, Alice Weidel said it again, our hand continues to be outstretched. We're willing to take part in government. We're ready. We want to implement the will of the German people. Now, they won't be in the next government, but that's the plan. Their whole aim is to be in the government in 2029, Anya.
So a real sense of momentum there, Matthew. Obviously, I do have to ask, though, I mean, are some people voting for the AfD out of protest because of the issues, because of the rising prices, because their heating bills have gone up? I mean, is this a protest vote to a certain extent?
That's certainly the look, I've been covering this party in recent months. There's been lots of elections last year around Germany, and there were those that felt that they were just fed up with the previous government. It was a 3-party government. It was really kind of marked by infighting over months, if not years. And so people were just fed up with it, and they felt that the only party that really reflected their anger, their frustration, in a meaningful way to them was the Alternative for Germany. And so we did hear in recent weeks and months people saying they're just going to vote for them because they wanted to send a signal. And that is the signal that we have just seen tonight. The second biggest force in the German parliament is a far-right party for the first time since World War II.
I wanted to ask you about Alice Weidel herself, Matthew. We were just seeing footage there of her. She presents herself as more moderate compared to other AfD figures. Do you think that strategy has helped the party attract a broader base?
Absolutely. I think that Alice Weidel is the kind of the professional face of the party. This is a very male-dominated party, a party that has strong links to the far right, a party that is being watched by security services in this country because it's seen as potentially far right-wing extremist. Some of its members are labelled as right-wing extremists. And then you have Alice Weidel come along, a lesbian who is married to a Sri Lankan-born woman of colour. They have 2 sons. She lives in Switzerland. Alice Weidel lives in Switzerland. She's an economist. She speaks Mandarin. She describes herself as a libertarian conservative. And so she has been able to kind of bring across a more presentable, a more appealing face than the party has had in the previous years. Having said that, Alice Weidel has also had to move further to the right in order to kind of to keep the right wing of the party, which is the dominant, the really extreme right wing of the party is the dominant wing of the party, and she's had to move to the right. And that involved using terms and words that are considered to be very popular in right-wing extremist circles, the use of the word remigration, which in extreme circles means repatriating or sending or deporting people even with German citizenship of a migration background back to their country of origin, if you like. And that is a really controversial word to use, and that's in the party programme, and Alice Weidel says, I don't mind using it. They also, it must be said, they claim that it just means deporting people who have no right to be in Germany on a big scale. So, but that's just about the normalisation of the party and basically trying to broaden the parameters of what can be said, and essentially Alice Weidel has been able to kind of present herself in the mainstream as a more moderate figure, but at the same time has been able to curry favour with the extreme faction in her party, because they know that she is the best chance they've got of being a broad appeal, of appealing broadly to the German public. And she said tonight, believe it or not, she said tonight, we are now a Volkspartei, a people's party. And until now, that's really only been the Social Democrats and the Christian Democrats who could really lay claim to calling themselves a Volkspartei, but that's what the AfD is calling themselves tonight.
Matthew Moore at the AfD party headquarters. Matthew, thanks so much. We'll come back to you later. And we're still joined by DW's chief international editor, Richard Walker, and Markus Ziener from the German Marshall Fund think tank. And we're getting lots and lots of questions about the Alternative for Germany and what their results, 19.5% today, according to the exit polls, what that means going forward. And Markus, I would like to ask you, because we just heard from Alice Weidel, she said something to the effect of, we will always have an open hand to coalition building. And Matthew Moore also talked about how the AfD has its eyes really on 2029 as its really, really big election. And of course, I guess the money and all of the things that can change over the next couple of years to 2029. And we've had a question from our YouTube chat here. Is the AfD likely to soften its stances on non-migration issues to appeal to an even wider voter base going forward in the years to 2029?
That's an excellent question, because the AfD is considered to be one of the more right-wing parties in Europe. If you compare them even to the Rassemblement National in France. I mean, this was a clear offer from Alice Weidel to say, well, we are ready to build a coalition with the CDU. However, she knows that this is not going to happen. And if we look at the numbers right now, I think you always have to see the results against the expectations. And the expectation was, as the correspondent pointed out, that it's going to be over 20%. Now it's below 20%. So this is a little bit of a damper for the AfD. And if the results stay the way they do, it would make things much easier for Friedrich Merz to form a coalition with the Social Democrats. So for the AfD, it's a blessing in disguise, to be honest. I mean, they doubled their numbers. They had 10% 3 years ago, and now they have almost 20. But still, it's not enough for them to be part of a government. You're correct. In 2029, I think this is crunch time in 4 years. if things are not sorted out, if the problems stay the way they do right now, I think the AfD will get even more votes.
If I could ask one more question, we've got another question in the YouTube chat. Someone is asking, I guess that they want a bit of a reminder of what the AfD is and its positions. It's saying, what is far right about the AfD?
Well, it's a racist party, at least in parts. And you know that the intelligence services are observing the party, in particular in Thuringia and other places. They have made a number of allusions to Nazi Germany and saying, well, we should not actually dwell too much on what happened during Nazi time. Alice Weidel herself, she said all the memorials, she dismissed them and said we should not look into the past all the time. And by the way, she was supported by Elon Musk, who in that infamous kind of talk they had, Alice Weidel with Elon Musk, he also said, well, Germany shouldn't look back all the time. So in a sense, this is crucial for Germany to have this, to remember the past and to draw lessons from the past. To dismiss that is something that puts the party to the far right and into an extremist position. There are many more quotes and statements by party leaders who support that.
Richard, can I just ask you, I mean, obviously, so it's not going to be in the government, in the next government, but what role will it take on in the coming years? What is its role going to be?
Well, I guess, yeah, I mean, they're going to be the largest opposition party. And I've just been looking at, you know, we went through, you know, the distribution of seats, and it's early days because these numbers can change and the number of actual seats that the various parties will end up with will change. But just looking at one set of numbers that we had here, the AfD projected to end up with 142 seats in the parliament. The Social Democrats, which have had this, you know, as we were hearing from Nina earlier, 100-plus year history, have been in government several times, you know, referred to as a Volkspartei, the People's Party that we just heard from Matt there, 116 seats, 142 to 116. So I think that can really have an impact on the you know, we're talking about inside the parliament here, but just the feeling, the dynamics of the parliament, just having a larger number of members of that party compared to the Social Democrats. Being the leading opposition party also, you know, gives them opportunities to set the agenda in Parliament to a greater extent than they would otherwise have had. So it does put them in a strong position. And I think, and depending on what kind of a constellation ends up forming a government here, if you do end up with a say a three-way coalition once again, say with the Conservatives, and then with two progressive parties, so you've got a kind of a Conservative-progressive coalition, but with three parties in it, there's a very good chance that they're going to have a tough time. You know, they're having to cooperate over an ideological divide. You have three parties. There's a very high chance of kind of that descending into bickering. And then,
as we saw in the last government.
As we saw in the last government. But then you'll have the AfD in Parliament and perhaps with one or two other smaller parties, and they'll be saying, well, you know, if the Conservatives would just form a coalition with us, we wouldn't have all of this bickering. And there, of course, we come to what Marcus was just talking about, all of the reasons why the other political parties say, well, we just can't touch you, you know, until you start... But then it may become a bit of a debate of, like, for the AfD, well, do they then try to moderate themselves so that they're in a position by the year 2029 to be seen as more palatable to other parties? Of course, this is election night. We're talking about a 4-year process now, so we shouldn't probably get ahead of ourselves. But it's going to be a very, very interesting dynamic and one that brings a lot of opportunities for the AfD.
Absolutely, because there are elements of the AfD which are very extreme, aren't there? But as you say, Richard, we don't want to go too far into the future. We want to stay talking about this evening. We are going to speak now to our correspondent at the SPD party headquarters. That's DW's chief political correspondent, Nina Haase, who joins us now from the SPD headquarters. I think we're just trying to bring her in. There she is. Nina, this is not a great result for the Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, obviously. What are people saying there at the SPD headquarters?
That this has to have consequences in terms of who takes the responsibility, who is to blame for this historic historic poor result. That is the worst result the SPD, Germany's oldest party, has had in modern history. So since the end of World War II. And of course, people are now asking themselves, was it the wrong decision to go into this election campaign with the current German Chancellor Olaf Scholz? Should we have gone for Germany's defense minister instead? If we all go back a couple of weeks, the SPD looked as though they were going to replace Olaf Scholz with Boris Pistorius, the very, very popular German defense minister. Boris Pistorius then felt forced to say, I never wanted to run anyway. He didn't want to challenge the German chancellor because that would have looked like a coup here. But of course, all these kind of questions are being asked now. What is also clear, Olaf Scholz is not seen as having to take all the blame for this poor result here. The party leadership is also very much in focus by the voter base. They're saying the way that we allowed for this bickering, all this infighting that reached the public, that has to have consequences also for the current duo that's leading the party. So Lars Klingbeil and Saskia Esken, if they don't step down tomorrow, then that is going to cause some serious problems. Whatever is going to happen, a tragic day for Germany's oldest party. Definitely a lot of soul searching will have to be done, and it's not clear who the next generation is going to be that's going to take the Social Democrats back into a position of confidence.
That's right. I mean, Scholz came in to his role as Chancellor by promising stability, didn't he? He followed Angela Merkel and said, you can trust me, I'm not going to shake things up too much. So when you say these results have to have consequences, does Scholz have a political future?
What we're hearing here from people is that it's partly his responsibility, definitely, that this chance of leading the country through this very, very difficult period was not done in a successful way, that they're now having to hand back the chancellery again to Friedrich Merz from the Conservatives. That's very, very, very likely at this point in time, that Olaf Scholz is going to have to move out. Now, he is an extremely experienced politician, Olaf Scholz. He has been... he was Angela Merkel's finance minister, you said it, but he was also the mayor of Hamburg, and he's very, very sure of himself. So I do think that he's got a couple of supporters who still want to benefit from his experience behind the ranks here, but definitely not in the limelight once the new government takes over. Having said all that, of course, he's going to stay in power until that new government is being formed. We're hearing that that might take till Easter. They're all saying that they will be as quick as they possibly can, because they are aware that lots of those foreign policy challenges are very, very difficult, and they need a German response. And Germany has done a lot of navel gazing in recent weeks. Berlin has been silent essentially on the international stage. The Europeans are waiting for a German positioning on all of that. So Olaf Scholz will certainly play a role in the next weeks to come, and then if the pressure from both the US and Russia continues, then we might see ourselves in a different geopolitical scenario in a couple of weeks' time. Who knows? But as of now, as of tonight, Olaf Scholz will go down in history as the least popular and the least successful German chancellor in post-war German history.
Nina Hase at the SPD headquarters. Nina, thanks so much for that analysis. We'll come back to you for more in a little while. All right, we're going to get you up to date on what is happening. The first projected results have now been published, so let me tell you about them. They indicate that the conservative CDU-CSU bloc is on course, as we're expecting, to win the election and emerge as the biggest party in the Bundestag, the German parliament. The Alternative for Germany could see a big rise in its share of the vote and come second, but the Social Democrats of Chancellor Olaf Scholz, as we've just been hearing, look set to take a big hit and come third. So let's take a look at those projected results in more details, Jared.
That's right. I can read those out to you. According to the latest projected results, the CDU-CSU Conservative bloc on 29%, up 4.9% from the last election, followed by the Alternative for Germany on 19.6%. That is up 9.2%. The Social Democrats of the incumbent Chancellor, 16%, down 9.7%. Then we have the Greens, 13.3%, minus 1.4% from the 2021 election. After that, we have the Left on 8.6%, up 3.7% from the last election. The Sarah Wagenknecht Alliance, a new party that's a year old, 4.7%. And I'm sorry, I forgot to mention the Free Democrats too, the pro-business Free Democrats. They are on 4.9%, a big drop from them. For them, down 6.5%, and other parties 3.9%. Anya.
Yep, and voter turnout in these elections was 84%, according to the exit polls. Now, this is higher than voter turnout in the last elections. So what we're seeing is quite a big turnout here, higher than the elections in 2021. That was 76.4%. All right, let's cross over now. We're going to go back to the Green Party's headquarters. Our correspondent there, Julia Saudelli, is standing by. Obviously, a less successful result for the Green Party. Julia, how are people reacting there, and what are they kind of assuming or hoping for? I mean, do they think that the Greens could still be part of the next government?
Well, we heard cheering when the result was read out here. It wasn't crazy, very loud cheering, but regardless, there was some celebration because the result isn't that bad if we consider how much the Greens have been a part of this last three-way coalition that has been deemed quite unpopular, if we consider that some of its ministers and some of the measures that were sort of promoted more by the Green Party were strongly criticized in the media, in the political debate, but also among voters. They are the one of the three parties of the coalition that have lost the least amount of votes if these first projections hold around 1%. So it's not a terrible result for the Greens, and it seems to be a result around 13-14% that leads back to basically the Greens voter base, the voters who will vote for the Greens regardless. And this is a result that isn't their best possible outcome that they had hoped for, but it is still okay. Now, whether this leads to any participation in government is still a big open question. We've heard from the leadership of the Green Party, but also from their Chancellor candidate, Robert Habeck, that he was very much willing, and he still is very much willing to enter a government. He wants to take on responsibility. He wants to continue shaping Germany's politics, especially in such difficult times internationally, geopolitically, and challenging times for Germany too. The question is whether this will be possible. As the numbers stand now, a coalition with the Greens and the Conservatives looks unlikely. Looking at the numbers, they could possibly enter government in a three-way coalition with the Social Democrats and the Conservatives. But given the not so great experience that the parties have had in the recent three-way coalition in this latest government, I think many are wary now of actually going into a coalition with so many different parties, with so many different positions, knowing that it could lead to very difficult interactions and making it harder to find compromise.
Julia, in this whole election campaign, climate change was hardly ever mentioned, was it? So, you know, do you think that as the core issue of the Green Party, do you think that the Greens are essentially now sort of looking for a new meaning? I mean, how do they offer themselves to people? What's their selling point?
Yeah, this has been a move that we've already seen starting in the last election, where the Green Party is trying to position itself as a party for the middle of society, a party that can reach out to different parts of society. And
Julia, I'm just going to interrupt you. I'm sorry, because I can see behind you that Robert Habeck is about to start speaking, and we're just going to listen in.
Erlaubt mir und uns ein paar einordnende...
Me to just give you a couple of words about the projected results that we've got on an evening that we know is going to be quite a long one before we really know what the results are. Let me begin with what we said before 6 o'clock. Thank you. Thank you for the election campaign. Thank you for joining ranks. Thank you for supporting one another. Thank you for the power that you put into our campaign. This is not something you can take for granted. I have to say it was exactly the election that I dreamed of, the exact election campaign we wanted to wage, and I'm grateful of what we've managed to do. We got ourselves out of the poll dip of 10% when the previous coalition broke apart, and we pulled our election result up closer to what we had, 21. None of this is anything we can take for granted. Thank you to all of our election campaigners. Thank you to the party, to the headquarters, and for the grassroots joining forces. And thank you to Annalena as well. Another thing we have to say, though, is that I wanted more. I think all of us dreamed of a better result. We were hoping to get higher results, and we were there. You know, we were up to 14% just a couple of weeks back, and then something happened that at least changed our election campaign, and that was Friedrich Merz voting in a motion with the AfD, and then many people voted against Merz, and they said we don't want to be in a coalition with the Union bloc. And I understand that, but it did make it harder for us.
And we're going to interrupt Robert Habeck, because now we're going to listen to Friedrich Merz from the CDU.
Konrad-Adenauer-Haus an diesem historischen Wahlabend, dem 23. Februar 2025.
So here we are, February 23rd, 2025. The Union bloc won this election.
Wir haben sie gewonnen.
We won the elections. We won them because the Union bloc worked together well, and we prepared very, very well for these elections and for taking on government responsibility. I want to say thank you to Markus Söder, the leader of the Christian Social Union Party. I want to thank the Executive Committee as well, and representing the many thousands of party members who gave their all to wage a fantastic election campaign, particularly to the young Union bloc members. You waged a wonderful election campaign. And I want to say to our voters, thank you for the trust that you have placed in me personally and in all of us in the party. I know how important the responsibility is. I understand the dimension of the task ahead, and I will be taking it on with great respect. And I know it's not going to be easy. And in this context, I want to express my respect for our political competitors as well. We waged a tough election campaign, But it was important to be as tough as we were. We had to engage with economic policy, migration, foreign policy, domestic security. But now we're going to put that aside and talk with one another. And we want to get a government capable of acting as quickly as possible with a sound parliamentary majority, because, friends, the world will not wait for us to do that. It's not going to wait for long coalition talks. We have to become capable of acting quickly so that we can do the right thing at home, so that we are strong and present in Europe, and so that the world sees that Germany has a reliable government in place. And the Christian Democrats and the Christian Social Union and I personally stand exactly for this approach. So on this note, let me express my gratitude once again. Thank you for all of you who came out here this evening. I've never seen so many people coming out to celebrate here in the party headquarters. We've never had so many representatives of the press here. We've never had so many visitors here in the party headquarters. So now we're going to wait for the final election results. But one thing is for sure, as we've said in the run-up to these elections, now we're going to really get things going. The party has started. We're going to be celebrating together this evening, and from tomorrow morning we'll get down to work again. Friends, thank you, and welcome to the party headquarters. Welcome to where the Union Bloc Party is going to celebrate our victory. Thank you very much for coming out this evening. Thank you for your support, and thank you for giving us a mandate to form a government. Thank you.